the SABL lab at St. Francis College. SABL stands for Self-Awareness and Bonding Lab. We are the newest lab at St. Francis, and it is a relationship science lab that's very multidisciplinary in nature. We incorporate research from educational psychology, social psychology, with a focus on relationships and how they evolve. The really unique thing about our lab is that a lot of the work that we do is completely student-initiated. So we have 4 fabulous research assistants that will be presenting their work today. And, and the great thing is they come with their own ideas, either from a class that they've taken, or their own personal lives, or an article they've read online. They come up with the ideas, and then together we develop them, and we work on, how can we make this a study, and we want to, have research that can be applied to the real world. So, just so you know, we have a website, and it's sfc.edu/SABL, SABL. You can find a lot of great information or research information, a list of all of the different research assistants and the work that they're focusing on, our different projects, and also ways to get involved and ways that you can contact us, because we're always looking for new researchers to help us expand our knowledge in the field, and we would welcome you to get in touch with us. Our email address is SABLSFC, that's SABLSFC@gmail.com. So if you have any interest in the relationship sciences, please reach out. We'd love to have you. So we are actually going to begin our presentations right now, and there's a slight switch in the schedule. Our first presentation will be Dunya Gragi, and it's Without You, My Life is Incomplete, or Is It? The Importance of Psychological Well-Being in Romantic Relationships.
So my name is Dunya, and as Dr. Cohen said, the title of my presentation is Without You, My Life is Incomplete, or Is It? The Importance of Psychological Well-Being in Romantic Relationships. Being in a serious relationship does not necessarily mean that an individual is not lonely. The couple may be in a long-distance relationship, they may have busy work schedules, or they simply may not connect when together. A lack of communication in a relationship can also cause a partner to feel disconnected from the other, creating loneliness. Loneliness is defined as the unpleasant experience that occurs when a person's network of social relations is deficient in some important way, either quantitatively or qualitatively. Loneliness is not assumed to be a result of a lack of personal relationships, but results from feelings of dissatisfaction with existing relationships or a lack of quality relationships. So, before I get into my study, I'm going to discuss something called the Michelangelo phenomenon. As all of you know, Michelangelo is a famous Renaissance artist and sculptor. So, as a sculptor, his task was to, paint famous sculptures like the David. The task of an artist is simple: to remove the stone that covers the figure. And this is the creative process, and the artist's tools were aspects of salvation. So by chipping away at the stone, the form slumbering in the black was allowed to emerge. So in Michelangelo's vision, the slumbering figure that lay behind in the hidden stone was something heroic, vibrant, and divine. So just like blocks of stone, humans too possess ideal forms. The human equivalent of the hidden ideal form is a possible self to which the individual aspires to be. Although the ideal self may slumber to some degree, this hidden internal construct can exert considerable influence on personal well-being, in turn impacting your relationship. To continue with the Michelangelo phenomenon, the research shows that our close partners promote movement towards, or away of course, from our ideal selves, and that this process is linked not only with relationship satisfaction and stability, but also to our personal well-being. It should be strongly noted that the measures of personal well-being, relatively general life satisfaction measures in addition to more specific self-esteem and loneliness measures, reflected diverse notions of what it means to be well. Despite this diversity, there remains a constant pattern of findings that our partner's behavior in reference to our ideal selves is especially linked to our well-being. It may be that individuals who have higher personal well-being are more likely to choose affirming partners, and that is those who are the happiest with their lives and may more successfully navigate the mate selection process. by pairing off with partners who bring out the best in them. So in a study by Dragotas, there was an attempt to connect 3 important suppositions regarding the self. And that is that our relationship partners can exert considerable influence over the specific nature of who we are, that we are motivated to bring out our actual self into alignment with our ideal self, and that such an actual ideal self movement is associated with enhanced personal well-being. The results of the research suggested that our romantic partners have considerable influence over what we become. And just as Michelangelo released the ideal form that was hidden in the block of marble, our romantic partners may serve to sculpt us in some manner, whether positive or negative. So psychological well-being and loneliness. Loneliness is a subjective and negative experience, the outcome of cognitive evaluation of the match between the quantity and quality of existing relationships and relationship standards. Loneliness has to be differentiated from social isolation, because some people with a small number of social contacts might feel lonely, whereas others might feel sufficiently embedded in their community and society. Loneliness may occur as a result of the type of affectional bond or attachment typically formed by a person. Specifically, insecure attachment styles contribute to the development of psychological stress, which is loneliness. In romantic relationships, loneliness may be experienced when the relationship with the partner has been damaged or because of infidelity. And there are 2 components to loneliness: emotional or social. Emotional is more based, spouse and best friend. Social is more of your interaction with your friends, your colleagues, and your neighbors. Weiss proposed the attachment theory as a framework that could be used to combine findings about loneliness and romantic relationships. In attachment theory, also Bowlby described the quality of affection bonds that develop between children and their primary caregivers, emphasizing that these early relationships with caretakers have a great influence on adult romantic relationships. Several studies showed a negative correlation between loneliness and the quality of romantic relationships. And thus, loneliness may not simply reflect a deficit in personal individual functioning, but it may result from our feelings of dissatisfaction within a current relationship. So when relationships deteriorate, they become a source of stress, and the partners may feel an emptiness in their relationships. So this was a really interesting study that I found, where it shows that praying for one's partner increases relationship satisfaction. This is what they were looking for. 345 students participated that were in a romantic relationship, and these were the scales that they used. The results indicated that the dating couples with high levels of avoidant attachment showed less satisfaction with their relationships and experienced feelings of loneliness. In addition, dating couples with high levels of attachment anxiety showed more feelings of loneliness and more psychological morbidity. So even when a person feels satisfied with the relationship, the person may be aware of their fear of losing the partner, or fear that the partner may not be able to provide what they need, feeling therefore lonely, and as a result, praying more. The study actually also indicated that the farther away you get from your partner, if you were to experience a breakup, this may lead you to become closer to whoever you worship, let's say it was God. So you wouldn't necessarily have the void that somebody would have after the breakup, because although you're letting go of the person you were in a relationship with, you're strengthening that void with a relationship with God. So now to my study. So this study was really important to me because I feel like in today's society there's such an emphasis on needing to be in a relationship to feel complete. So the purpose of this exploratory research is to examine the relationship between marital status, relationship satisfaction, well-being, and experience of loneliness. As I mentioned at the beginning, somebody being lonely doesn't necessarily mean that you're single. A majority of the times it's someone who can be in a relationship, a lack of communication between you and your partner. All of these things cause someone to feel lonely. So my methodology. There were 62 participants. They were recruited through social media as well as other online sources. My scales included, I used a RIF psychological well-being scale, a relationship assessment scale, and a differential loneliness scale. So this is an example of some of the questions that were on the first scale. This is the RIF Psychological Wellbeing Scale. So we ask questions like, when I look at the story of my life, I am pleased with how things have turned out. I have the sense that I have developed a lot as a person over time. I like most aspects of my personality. Some people wander aimlessly through life, but I am not one of them. So these questions are, it's a combination of questions just to get a sense for your overall psychological well-being. This is an example, a sample of the second scale. This is more relationship-based. How well does your partner meet your needs? How often are you thankful for being in this relationship? How much do you love your partner? And finally, the loneliness scale. Questions like, I find it easy to express my feelings of affection towards members of my family. It wasn't directly geared towards feeling lonely in a romantic relationship, it was just overall. So results of my study. Participants, there were 62 people, 11 males, 51 females. Apparently there weren't that many males on social media this day when the survey was released. The marital status I thought was really important. 24% of the people that participated in the survey were single, whereas a lot of the studies that I looked at previously, all of them only recruited people that were already in a romantic relationship, not somebody who was single. And then 43% of the people were in a monogamous relationship. There were significant positive correlation between the well-being scale and the relationship assessment scale. Negative correlation between the well-being scale and the loneliness scale, and a negative correlation between the relationship scale and the loneliness scale. So there were no significant difference between the male and females in the scores on all of the tests. There was no significant difference between the different age groups and the scores that they obtained on these 3 tests. So there was a significant difference between the people in relationships and those not in relationships. Those who were single scored significantly higher than those currently dating, and those in a monogamous relationship and those who were married. So as psychological well-being increases, we found that the value of the relationship increases, and as the value of the relationship increases and as psychological well-being increases, the loneliness experience decreases. This suggests that relationships are beneficial for the individual, not necessarily just romantic. So it is interesting that there was no significant difference found between people in relationships and those not in relationships in terms of psychological well-being. And this suggests that psychological well-being is more than just the marital status of the individual. Perhaps it is tied to components related more specifically to the self than to the individual you're with. Single participants scored significantly higher on the loneliness scale than those in relationships, suggesting that those who have the support of a significant other are significantly less lonely. These are just some limitations by this convenience sample that was used and potential issues with self-report measures. So for future research, I would include qualitative data to better understand the subjective well-being of individuals in different relationship configurations.
So my name is Clara Lizardo. I am an alum from St. Francis College, a recent alum, and I work now in student activities. I also am an assistant researcher for SABL. So let's talk a little bit about, does the color red influence our perceptions of attractiveness? Okay, so let's look a little bit into that. All right, so let's take a moment to think of the color red. What words or symbols come to mind? Any holidays, shapes?
Hearts.
Exactly, we have hearts. We have
Roses.
Roses, exactly.
It's a double.
What'd you say? Oh yeah, I mean that too. Okay, so this is called the red effect. What is the red effect? The red effect is construed as resulting from the repeated pairing of red and some particular concepts, information, and experiences. Over time, these pairings will form strong implicit associations such that the perception of red alone can act activate culturally conditioned psychological reactions. Now, what does this mean? What this means is that simply saying, for example, that every year since you were born, you see your parents exchanging a red heart-shaped box of chocolates, not only are you associating the mere object of the heart, you're also associating the color red with emotion, which is important. Okay, as you can see here, yeah. Okay, so red symbolizes a few of the most intense human emotions. We have passion, lust, fear. However, this is not solely a cultural adaptation, but it's a biological one. Okay, so Elliot and Niesta, which they're really known for the color red research. They're the headgears of that. In 2008, they ran 5 experimental studies that found that red is a non-physical factor that influences an increase in attraction. Meaning, just wearing the color red, just saying, boosts the attraction levels in the eyes of both heterosexual males and females. Okay. Color and context. Color is a representation of emotion due to human association and priming. Now, what is priming? Okay. So, priming is a non-conscious form of human memory concerned with perceptual identification of words and objects. It refers to activating particular representations or associations in memory just before carrying out an action or task. Okay? So, for example, when you think of a heart, again, are you more inclined to think of a blue heart or a red heart? Do you think of Halloween or do you think of Valentine's Day? And it's pretty obvious that, it's Valentine's Day and the color red. So red is both used to represent danger and romance. So in saying that, the exposure to negatively arousing images could either enhance or suppress the red effect, what I had mentioned in the beginning. Marketing. Many, if not most, or all companies use color to arouse both you and I as consumers that we are. I'm going to flash a few images, and I want you to tell me the color that best represents the logo, okay? Just shout the color.
Yellow.
Yeah.
Green.
Yep.
Blue.
Boom! You are all influenced by marketing. So as you can see, you pretty much all knew the colors. Now, none of these companies are calling your house every day, buy our products, buy our products. You know why? Because they don't need to. They have color. That's what it's there for. Okay. So, color can shape consumer perceptions such as brand personality, familiarity, likability, and purchase intent. When consumers identify products, they are attached by personal opinions and memory identification. So when you see the M for McDonald's, your mind isn't just shouting yellow; it's shouting either yuck or yum. So it's also attached to our personal opinions and biases. Does anyone recognize the little face at the corner? It's flow. It's flow. What? Progressive. Boom. Okay, so her entire outfit and down to her accessories and her makeup are all influenced by color and marketing. So as you can see here, even her hairstyle. So you know her wherever she goes. Okay. So, certain colors evoke certain psychological emotions and effects. Therefore, learning from memory association and comparing certain feelings when visually presented with a certain color can affect a person's opinion of a certain product. This assumption could be made with or without being given information of that particular product. Again, so there's biases already beforehand, whether you know about the product or you don't. Okay, as you can see here, a lot of banks and they use green and they use blue. Blue is for reliability, and And a lot of clearance items are always in red, sell, go away, boom, boom. Black is more for like sleek, Apple, and like it's white and black is for sleek cars, things like that. Okay. So, a study performed in 2012 divided 450 participants into 3 groups. It first showed the participants, the first group, just the name of the product in grayscale. The second was the logo in grayscale. The third, a fully colored logo. Then they asked to associate the logos with certain words, including sincerity, excitement, likability. The results showed that there was a particular significance with the color red specifically being associated with excitement when compared to the color version versus the grayscale of the logos, meaning that color is significant. Okay, and here's a little bit of a color emotion guide. There's a lot of psychology that goes behind marketing, if you didn't realize. Okay, so there's a sale sign. Okay, so with this previous research in mind, I decided to do a study to see if marketing helps with attractiveness. Okay, our rationale. So, can the color red boost attractiveness in marketing materials? Directly compare colors close to the spectrum to one another. Okay, and our hypothesis. We hypothesized that heterosexual females would rate male faces presented on red bullseyes as more attractive than male faces on blue or orange bullseyes. Those exposed to the red website logo would rate all of the faces as more attractive than those exposed to the blue website logo, which I will show you in a minute. It was 95 female participants were presented with 12 photos of potential mates, repeating on red, orange, and blue logos. Then the participants were asked to rate a scale of attractiveness from 1 to 7. And here we go. So that's an example. So now we'll talk a little bit about the results. There was no difference in ratings of the pictures based on the color of the background and on the logo color of the terms rating the pictures. And I'll explain to you a little bit of why that happened. So like every study, we have limitations. The one that stands out the most is the fact that there was a floor effect, which was of the largest concern, giving us an overall 3.04 attractiveness rating for all of the 12 faces. Meaning that the faces that were chosen, all of them, weren't attractive in general. So, hey, it's hard to get those rights on like the attractive ones, but it's true. So future research. We have actually already conducted future research based on this study with Sky and Dr. Cohen. And if you want to find out more about that study, you can email me.
Actually, speaking about how research is an iterative process, what's really great is from this study that Clarabelle did, Clarabelle and Shanice, who will be the next presenter, we just finished conducting another study which looks at whether or not people who are exposed to blue or pink-colored paper are more likely to choose closeness-generating questions when talking to a new potential acquaintance. So we actually found some pretty interesting results that color does, in fact, influence our likelihood to want to form intimate relationships with others, but for more details on that, stay tuned. But next up, we have Shanice Lawrence with To Facebook or Not to Facebook, Social Media and Online Dating.
My name is Shanice, and during my senior year at SFC, I got to work in the SEelf-Awareness and Bonding Lab with Dr. Cohen and my colleagues. So I decided to do Facebook. Well, I decided to do social media and online dating because social media is just something that is very prevalent today. And online dating was once deemed as socially unacceptable, and we kind of all do it now. So I thought that'd be interesting to do. So about the study, I wanted to examine the relationship between social media and online dating, like I said. I mean, you go outside right now, everyone's on their phone. You go home, you're on your computer. Before you go to sleep, you check your phone, and when you wake up, you check your messages all over again. And the process kind of just repeats itself. As for the online dating, my aunt is a serial online dater, so that would be cool to like examine the relationship. Another interesting aspect is how lonely you deem yourself and how that plays into how often you online date. So why is that interesting? Like I said, social media is just a major way of communication nowadays, and online dating is becoming a social norm. As for loneliness, it's definitely interesting to see how loneliness plays a factor in whether you online date or not. So before I tell you about my study, of course I had to do previous research, and of course I started with social media and online dating. So there were two studies that I found that were really interesting. The first one was done in 1995 by Sanderson and Cantor, and basically it states that one of the most significant developmental changes in adolescence is that of social interactions, especially with social dating. I thought that was interesting because I just kind of related it to myself. From junior high school to high school is one of probably the biggest changes in a young adolescent's life. Depending on how you make that change, it kind of shapes your high school years, your college years, and how you interact with people on a daily basis. Another study that I found was done in 2011, and it basically stated that women tend to be more selective when looking at potential partners. They tend to look at how you're doing in school, what kind of jobs you have, social status, and things of that nature. Whereas men tend to focus on attractiveness and youthfulness. Once again, I kind of related that to myself. When me and my friends are talking, we kind of talk about our potential partners, what kind of jobs you have. If you don't have a job, you better be in school. Like, you gotta be doing something. So it was cool to think about that. But when I hear my little brother talk, he's like, is she hot or not? How tall is she? You know, what kind of hair does she have? So it was cool to be able to kind of relate that back to myself. As for loneliness, I personally didn't find a lot of studies on loneliness, but what I did find interesting was that previous research suggests that individuals who are high in loneliness are more likely to use the internet and email as a source of communication. I found that to be interesting because it's kind of true. When you are lonely, you kind of stay to yourself, and in staying to yourself, you do tend to, press refresh on Facebook a lot more times than if you're with your friends. So taking all that past research into mind, this study, like I said, investigated a relationship between social media and online dating and examined how much of a role loneliness played in social networking sites and online dating services. So for the rationale, understanding the relationship between social media and online dating is important because social networking sites as a means for communicating is rapidly increasing. The usage of social dating services is becoming more acceptable. And there's a lot of research on online dating and social media, but not a lot that kind of examine the relationship between the two. So for the hypotheses, we hypothesized that participants who deem themselves as lonely or unworthy of companionship would use social media and online dating services more frequently, and participants who frequently use social media sites such as Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram would use online dating services more than participants who didn't use social media sites frequently. So for our study, we had 63 people, 51 were females, 12 were males. As for the location, it was pretty diverse. We had some people in New York, in different states in in the United States, and different people from like different countries, which was kind of cool. The materials we used was just a survey. Being that we did recruit people on a social psychology website, it was just one basic survey that included the consent form, and we had demographic questions that inquired about sexual orientation, religion, knowledge of social media and online dating services. We also had questions relating to what traits the participants found most attractive in their potential partner. Some of those were like health, attractiveness, stability, and things of that nature. And we also had the UCLA scale. Actually the same one that Dunia used, I didn't even know, which pretty much asked participants to rate their level of loneliness. So for the results, these are just the demographics. You can see where the participants identified themselves as, where they resided, and you can see that most of them identified as heterosexual, but 9.5 were bisexual and 4.8 identified themselves as homosexual. So this table just describes what sites participants consider to be social media and online dating. I found it kind of interesting because in Facebook is a lot of social media, not a lot of dating. But like I said before, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of the times you kind of do meet your partner on Facebook. So why is that not considered online dating? That's just another thing to think about. So for the hypotheses results, 30.2 of the sample had tried online dating before. But of those who tried online dating, the results showed there was no significant correlation between how lonely the person felt and how often they used dating sites, which kind of made me sad because no one wants not to get results. And the results showed that there was also no significant correlation between how often people visited social media sites and how often they visited online dating sites. So this is another table. It kind of just describes the participants' reported purpose for using social networking and online dating sites. As you can see, a lot of them use both social media and dating to meet new friends. More people use social media to stay connected to old friends. And a lot of people use both social media and online dating services to find someone to connect with, to have casual flings and hookups, and to find a partner. Just one more table. So this table just kind of shows the correlation between participants who visited social media sites and how often they use online dating sites. As you can see, the correlation is not significant. So just to kind of sum everything up, the results fail to support both hypotheses. This suggests that there's no link between how lonely a person feels and if they use online dating services. And furthermore, the results suggest that there's no significant relationship between social media and online dating sites. Limitations can definitely be the small sample size. I mean, we only had 63 people. And definitely the fact that we use a self-report measure because participant bias is very real. I mean, people probably skip questions, probably lie. So yeah, future research could use a larger sample size and could potentially focus more on the relationship between loneliness and social media usage. Future research could also look at how self-esteem could play a role in this as well. It is important to continue research on this topic because social media is rapidly becoming a major source of communication and online dating is being used more than ever. It is important to understand the link between the two and how loneliness plays a part in that.
My name is Stephanie Favorite, and my presentation is titled Measuring Trust and Commitment in Long-Distance Relationships. So as we know, with the dawn of the technology era, many people are communicating with each other far and wide over social media and other online forums. And I myself, being an international student here in New York, I communicate with my family through Skype and Facebook the majority of the time, as well as my boyfriend, who is in Canada studying. So I am in a long-distance relationship. So the development of these forums, such as social media and online chat rooms, have led to romantic relationships, both the start of romantic relationships as well as the maintenance of romantic relationships. So what do we mean by a long-distance romantic relationship, or simply an LDR, as I may refer to it during the course of my presentation? So according to Roberts and Pistole, a long-distance relationship is categorized by the separation-reunion cycle. And this simply describes the dynamic of the relationship, which is basically you and your partner, for the most part, are geographically apart. You do not reside in the same space. So your partner could reside in a different state, a different county, province, country, but the general principle is that you're not in the same space. And what happens is you reunite for very short periods of time, whether you go to visit or they visit you, but then you ultimately separate again. So this reunion and separation in the relationship actually does cause stress and anxiety. Just imagine being away from someone that you love for long periods of time. It can be stressful, especially if you yourself have a stressful life and your partner isn't there to support you physically. So Pistole, Roberts, and Moscow actually stated that this stress can be exacerbated if you and your partner are separated for extremely long periods of time, which is understandable. because your support system is not with you. So while those things I just described are certainly unique to long-distance relationships do share a lot with traditional relationships, which are simply relationships where you and your partner are together physically. So one of these commonalities is trust. We all want to trust our partners. We all want trust in our relationships. We want our partner to trust us, and we want to trust them. And this definition of trust is based on placing your belief in that person's truth. So whatever that person relates to you, you believe it. You have no doubts in what they tell you. So according to Ramble, Holmes, and Zana, these interactions of trust actually promote satisfaction and increase confidence in your relationship. As well as trust, we want to know that we have commitments in our relationships. You want to know that your partner is committed to you and your relationship, the benefits of your relationship. And you also want to be a committed person in your relationship. So commitment can be shown in a relationship when you actively seek to spend time with your partner. Whether you are physically together or not, if you make time to spend with each other, whether it's over Skype or over dinner, you're showing commitment. So this study was really personal to me. Being in a long-distance relationship myself, I've had my fair share of questions on how do you make it work, how can you trust this person, you don't know what they're doing half of the time. So I really wanted to study the levels of trust and commitment in long-distance relationships compared to traditional relationships. I wanted to see if there truly was a difference in the levels of trust and commitments that people in these two types of relationships demonstrated. So unfortunately, there was a lack of research in that particular topic in terms of trust and commitment in long-distance relationships. So this kind of set my study apart from all those that were out there. So for this study, we had 93 participants in total. We had an overwhelming amount of female participants, 79, and an underwhelming amount of male participants, 14. Of our 93 participants, 26.9% of the participants were between the ages of 18 to 23. And interestingly, our highest percentage of participants were actually between the ages of 24 and 29. Also, in terms of ethnicities, we had 28% who identified as African American. We had 26.9% who defined themselves as Caucasian, and 29% were categorized as other or West Indian, which is mainly my family and friends. So for this study, my materials were a demographic survey, a standard demographic survey just seeking age, ethnicity, type of relationship. Also, we used the trust scale by Rampel, Holmes, and Zana, but it was adapted because we did choose to eliminate some questions because they just weren't pertaining to the study at hand. We also adapted the investment model scale by Rusbold, Monson, Agnew. There were 4 subscales in that one scale, but we only decided to use 3, which were the satisfaction, investment, and commitment scales. And then finally, we kind of created our own scale, which we titled the Favorite Trust and Commitment Scale. And this was basically almost a hybrid of the 2 adapted scales that we used. We tried to make it as present day as possible, so there were questions such as if your partner refused to give you their social media passwords, would you be upset by that? Would you think that they were hiding something from you? Also, if your partner were to go out with friends without telling you, how would you feel about that? So in terms of our results, 67.7% of our participants were in traditional relationships, which is not too surprising, and 32.3% were in long-distance relationships. And interestingly, out of the 32.3%, we had a further breakdown. So 63.3% started off their relationship as long distance, while 35.7% actually were initially traditional, but throughout the course of time, they turned into a long distance relationship. So there was no significant difference between long distance and non-long distance participants in terms of trust, satisfaction, investment, and commitment. And this was secretly a little bit of validation for me to show that while long distance relationships do have their own difficulties and challenges, for sure they do, but to kind of subscribe to this misconception that long distance relationships are less valuable or have lower satisfaction levels than traditional relationships is simply not true. So for my limitations, it was a convenient sample. I had to really beg my family and friends to take my survey, to spread it, to share it. And there were potential issues and biases with self-report measures, as the study was, for the most part, that. And for our future directions, I would suggest that more detail would be collected on the nature of the long-distance relationships, particularly that part where some of the relationships started off as long-distance and some did not. I think it would be interesting to collect more information on that sample, as well as to include qualitative data to better understand issues faced in long-distance relationships and develop questions to address their common concerns. So, as I stated previously, the results from the study support the notion that long-distance relationships can be considered equivalent to traditional relationships. They are relationships. At the end of the day, they come with their own struggles, so do traditional relationships, but they can be put on the same level. These findings may also provide reassurance to those of us out there who are in long-distance relationships. And more so now, we're seeing this increasing as technology is just able to promote better maintenance of the relationship while you are away from your partner.